Hello, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on wherever you're attending this from. My name is Shekhar Sanyal, and I want to welcome you to this extraordinary webinar that we are doing today for the digital conversations called Getting India Inc. Back on Track, a Future Tech Perspective. This is brought to you by the Future Technologies panel of the IET, and we will be discussing a whole lot about what the Indian ecosystem as well as the India Inc., so as to say, should do as we move into this new uncertain or new kind of future. So before we start off, I'd like to thank Sri Suresh Prabhuji, who has joined us today as a special guest, as a guest of honor, and will give a keynote, plus a whole host of luminaries from the India industry world who will be there, and I will introduce you to them as we go along. But let me start by talking a bit about the IET. IET, or the Institution of Engineering and Technology, is a professional society for engineers which is actually going to celebrate its 150 years from October this year. So we have been around, as you can see, for quite some time, and we have been working in the engineering space, working with engineers. Our vision is working to engineer a better world. So we create a platform which is neutral, which allows engineers to come together and try to solve problems which are of national importance or international importance. In India, we have been around, our members have been around for the last 75 years or so. The IET is actually headquartered out of the UK. It started in 1871. As I told you, we are celebrating 150 years as the Society of Telegraphic Engineers. Then became the Institution of Electrical Engineers, and finally the Institution of Engineering and Technology. It's one of the largest engineering institutions currently in the world. Our focus areas, the way we work in the IET is essentially take engineers to make sure that we are solving problems. We have about 180,000 members spread across 127 countries around the world. In India, we have got about 13,000 members who are working with us to create, as we say, a better world and a better India. We focus on 3-4 areas in India. One area is essentially engineers and engineering education. So we do a lot of work with engineering universities and colleges to help them go up the value chain. We work with students, we work with teachers, we work with the institutes themselves. We also are one of the academic accreditation bodies globally. So we also do a benchmarking accreditation of engineering courses as and when invited. On the other side of it, we have 3 thought leadership platforms that we work on. This essentially allows engineers to come together and solve problems which are important to India's growth as a country. So our first platform is the Future Technologies platform. This essentially focuses on the technologies of the future, which has got huge impact on the growth of this country. I will invite in a little while the chair of the Future Technologies panel to talk a bit about it and the genesis and the growth of it from where it came from. The second area that we focus on is future of mobility and transport, which is again extremely important for the growth of India as a country. And finally, an amalgamation of both these two things becomes the future of work. How transport is going to change the way we work. We are already seeing all of us currently, across most of us, are actually doing this webinar from home. So which means we are working from home. So the future of work is changing as we speak, and it's got accelerated by this pandemic. So the IET's focus on future of work has been there for the last year and a half, and that's something that we also work on. That is what we do. We bring out advisories, we bring out white papers, we do conferences like this. The whole idea is how do you create a platform where people can come together and impact the change that is required. So that is what I want to talk about the IET. IET is a membership organization. If you would like to be part of this work that we are doing, I would encourage you to become a member of the IET so that we can get your inputs and your support to do this work as we go forward. You could go to our website, theiet.in is where you need to go, and you can get all details about the work that we do in India. Globally, if you would like to know more about what we do, you can go to the IET.org. That is THEIET.org or THEIET.in. So that's what I wanted to say before we started off, just so that you know what the IET does. I would now like to call on stage Dr. Rishi Bhatnagar. Dr. Rishi Bhatnagar is the chair of the IT Future Tech panel. He's also in his day job, so that's where he volunteers as the IT Future Tech panel. But in his day job, he's the president of Aeris. He's an international speaker, thought leader in the Internet of Things and digital space. He's co-authored a book called Enterprise IoT along with the team from Bosch. He's the recipient of the ET Now Business Leader of the Year, Voice and Data Leadership Recognition Award, as well as India ISV IoT CEO of the Year award, plus BTVI's Business Leader of the Year. Lots of list of awards. Currently at the President of Aeris Communications India, Dr. Bhatnagar is leading the Aeris business in the Indian subcontinent, MEA, and the APAC region. I should add, Rishi is also a dear friend. So, Rishi, please, it's over to you.
Thank you, Shekhar, and thank you for everybody to join this session. We are in a habit of I'm calling somebody on stage. So now the stage is at home and we all are here. So welcome and thank you. In 2015, we started India IET IoT panel with around 8 people as volunteers. And the vision at that time was how can we evangelize and let India know that this revolution is coming. While working on different white papers, we created different working groups. We called a lot of volunteers to come. In 2016, we started our first IoT Congress. And I still remember Mustafa sir is there in the call and how he told me and taught me how a conference can be organized. With starting with that, and it was very encouraging that Ravi Shankar Prasad ji at that time, who was the communication and IT minister, gave us a video message. The Secretary Government of India came, and so on and so forth. That in the 4th edition in 2019, we had the message from the Honorable Prime Minister, and I had an opportunity to meet Suresh ji himself in his office. He was kind enough to give us his video message for our startup awards. Thank you very much, sir, for your encouragement. In 2018, we realized that the vision of evangelizing IoT is over. People know about what is the Internet of Things. Now the thought is to see how can we vision to make India leader in IoT. With that kind of vision, we started working. We created different working groups. And then last year, while working on different works and different white papers, we have been able to see that will work on 11 different working groups, and we should not be thinking only about Internet of Things, but to see how future technologies, including AI, machine learning, AR, VR, blockchain, everything we can include so that we can provide a consolidated solution to the industry. Our Thought Leader Awards, our Startup Awards have been really encouraging, and people have been participating quite a lot in all of that. It has been a real success that we have been able to get these kind of organizations. Many of the organizations in India participate. Now it has a global advisory board with people all over the world trying to see what are we doing, what kind of white papers we are generating, and how can they learn from it. Without taking much time, I want to say I'm really very thankful and really feeling proud. 2 of my advisory board members, Vijay sir and Indra ma'am, are there today to speak and guide us. And Mustafa sir, who has always been a guide to me as a person and to IET, is also there. And Suresh sir, thank you very much for joining us. We are really keen to hear from you with your vast experience and knowledge. How can we get India back on track and how the future technology can work on it? Thank you.
Thank you, Rishi. Thank you so much. Without wasting any more time, I would like to invite Sri Suresh Prabhuji to speak. He does not need any introductions. We all know him. But just a few lines because we have an international audience as well. Sri Suresh Prabhuji is India Sherpa at G20 and G7. He represents India there. He is a 6 times member of the parliament. He was formerly the Minister of Commerce and Industry and Civil Aviation in the previous government. And at various points of time, he has been part of the ministries, whether it was industry, environment, fertilizers, chemicals, power, heavy industries, and public enterprises. Currently, he is member of the Rajya Sabha, and he has been a member of the Lok Sabha in the 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th Lok Sabha sessions. He's a chartered accountant by profession and a member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants India. That's a very, very small introduction to the body of work that you have done, sir. But we are very, very excited to listen to what you have to say, and very thankful that you could spare your time to come here today. Thank you so much, sir.
So thank you very much, Mr. Sanyal and Mr. Bhatnagar, for providing the backdrop to this program. Thank you, my dear friend Indra, for introducing me to all of you and bringing me into this very interesting platform. You know, Vijay Karya is also one of the members of the advisory board, and I'm sure his advice is benefiting a lot. So I really thank you for all for bringing me into this very interesting group of professionals who are really pioneering, doing a pioneering work in various fields of life. You just mentioned the topic of this program, how to bring India back on track. Of course, this is a cliche which we always use for focusing something which we have probably lost focus of. Therefore, we say we want to bring it back on track. Normally, as former railway minister, I know everything has to move on track all the time. And we really therefore have to wonder whether we should use your combined knowledge, use technologies, known technologies today, the emerging technologies, and the future technologies which are still to come into the commercial domain. All of those together, how do you use them to bring higher growth rate of growth for the country? But something interesting is that though we now talk about the fourth industrial revolution, we always use technology. I'm not talking now, we means India alone, as a humanity in the world for all times to come. What has changed is the nature and the shape of those technologies. It is not that there was no technology in existence even say 10,000 years ago, even 75,000 years ago, when the real, using this very famous book now, Homo sapiens terminology, when those sapiens started walking on the planet, they also used technology. But how could they move from one place to another, from Africa to far away to Australia, and from this side into North America? How was it possible? So technology was known to them. They knew, and in fact, the biggest discovery of technology at that time, which changed probably the shape of things to come, was fire. One of the biggest discoveries. But technology has always been guiding the development of humanity. What is now changing dramatically is the magnitude of its change that is bringing in, the speed at which it is coming into force, and the amount of obsolescence it is causing to the known technologies. At the rate at which the obsolescence is happening is phenomenal. And therefore, the challenge for India would be, how do you keep track of these changes? How to integrate those changes into our day-to-day life, into day-to-day life is not just the household lives, but country as a whole, in the entire economic mainstream, how do you bring them in is one matter. But first and foremost thing would be, how do you keep track of something which is becoming obsolete and something which is on the realm of change, which is going to come in maybe after a few years. If you know that, itself will be a great help for India's policy planners. And who can do that better than an institute like yours? Because firstly, you are a multidisciplinary skills you possess. You are that way independent, but also all professionals. You are direct link with the industry, which is so important, because technology per se, if it is not an applied technology, then again it has some limitation, because it can just remain in some laboratory or in some academic institution. So we have a perfect understanding of all that. So first and foremost, in my opinion, an institution like yours should become a think tank for technology and therefore try to guide the country as a whole as to what is coming and what is going out. That is very equally important. What is becoming obsolete. So that is also equally important. So even the guidance provided on these lines will be of great help to the country as a whole. Secondly, we have no choice but to embrace all technology that are going to come. Why I'm saying there's no choice? Because I was just talking someday, few months ago, I think in probably I don't remember the forum, but somewhere outside the country, to a large audience, and I was telling them, is it possible for any country in the world to prevent a technology from coming into their territory and geography? Can you, and I gave an example, can you stop air from coming in? Is there any way that you can stop air from coming in? Air will always come in. In a room, you can purify the air. You cannot prevent air from coming in. So technologies of today are become that intrusive. They don't need a facilitation to enter. Because technology is a platform, but there are multiple platforms on which you can adopt the technology, can access the technology without necessarily permission being given by somebody. Of course, some proprietary technologies you cannot access just like that unless you take care of the IPRs. But technology per se, so presuming that IPRs have been taken care of, you cannot prevent a technology from coming in. So, in a way, you can say that there is no technology in the world which can prevent another technology from coming into your country. So, there is no preventive technology. Like, for example, when people are developing very high-ended weapons which can actually descend on your country and destroy everything, the country is prepared a preventive missiles that will actually make sure that once you fire a missile from my country and you are targeting in my country, then my country will fire it in such a way that it will get destroyed somewhere outside itself. But I don't see there is any technology that's a military capability and only instrument related issue that I can prevent your instrument from getting destroyed. But technologies that Dr. Bhatnagar just mentioned, earlier Mr. Sanyal talked about it, are not the kind of technology that can prevent. And therefore, embracing them is the best option. Rather than wasting our energy into how do I prevent it. Rather than that, my strategy should be how do I embrace it, how do I integrate it with best possible outcomes for myself as a country. And therefore, if you change this mindset and decide to adapt yourself to the new technological changes, and therefore, then the question that comes, if you accept this, and this is in my opinion the only way you can progress in future, and if you accept that part, then comes another help that you can offer is what is the best platform, what is the best ecosystem that we should create to adopt these technologies into different kinds of socio-economic activities. So rather than prevention, now come to a different stage, adaptability. And there again, I can clearly see a role for an organization like yours. Because who will prepare, talk about ecosystem? I can individually, I am going to be the user of technology. So maybe Indra or Vijay can go and talk to the technology holders, pay their license fee and bring the technology here. But they cannot create the entire ecosystem. They are in industry. But we need a proper ecosystem to adopt several aspects of it. So again, that I can clearly see a role for you. I'm just thinking, maybe I don't prepare, so I give my off-the-cuff remarks and give ideas just to kickstart this discussion. The third element, in my opinion, and which I think is going to be extremely important, because as Dr. Bhatnagar earlier mentioned, that why not just be a participant into IoT? Why not be the leader of it? In fact, this is one opportunity in which the race is equal. All of us are at ground zero, and therefore we are starting really on the same platform as a world. Whoever takes that early lead can actually succeed. Not just early lead, but a proper lead. To early starter, there is no early more advantage because we don't hold it anyway. It's only an applied part that we are doing it today. Can we use and look at some sectors in which there are certain challenges? And therefore, can we use some kind of, if not a total integration, some sort of applied integration of these different technological backgrounds to come up with a solutions for a particular aspect of it? One can say our agriculture is so much driven by individuals. As a result of that, we have so much of disguised employment, we can say. So many people could be taken off the farm, but where will they go? That's another issue that I'm not discussing that today. There are some ideas and I'm working on those ideas. I'm not going to discuss that. But let us come to agriculture per se. What are the challenges of agriculture? One, the primary problem is of water. Now, what is the problem of water in agriculture? 86% of the water of India, which is only 4% of the total water of the world, in any case, the India has, that's freshwater resources, goes into agriculture, 86%. So, can you therefore bring all these technologies together, including artificial intelligence and Internet of Things, to make sure that water is given in a manner that what that crop needs, the time it needs, the bare quantity it needs? If you can actually come out with a solution integrating these technologies, just imagine the transformative effect it can have, not just on India, not just on agriculture, but on everything else. Why? Because Indra would be doing a business, industry, and she is always told that industry is misusing the water. The fact is that 86% water is used for agriculture. So industry can use it when it is available. The household can use it when it is there in the tap. So if you don't release the water, that 86%, then the rest of the economic activity, rest of the social activity can get that water. And to release it, you cannot make water. I'm sure one day your IET will think about making water also. I'm sure you will have the capability. But at least today, we can technically make water. We can do it in laboratories. But the kind of quantity of water we need, we cannot have it. We can desalinate it, but we can recycle it, but we cannot manufacture it. So, only way we can actually make it available for other uses than agriculture is by making water used for agriculture in a manner which is optimized and also done in a proper manner. But there is another element. The water, too much water is not good for the soil. In fact, salinity can increase and can cause more damage to the soil. And the soil only guarantees the fertility, which in turn can produce agriculture products from the land. Land doesn't produce it, it's a topsoil. So now, can we use these new technologies? For example, Internet of Things, you can always know everything. You can have a sequence of events which ensures that it can happen in a proper manner. So you know exactly the kind of, in fact, the first green revolution happened because the research available in the laboratories and the new crop varieties that were discovered could be used in farm in a shortest possible time with an assistance provided by the agriculture extension workers. So today, just imagine, all that was done manually. We need man anyway. Because even artificial intelligence presupposes that the intelligence which is put from somewhere else into the artificial intelligence. So the basic human intelligence is always needed. The human intelligence is responsible for artificial intelligence anyway. So why not we think about making a sector like this completely transformed through use of such technologies? Well, let's talk about drip irrigation, which helped Israel. Can we think about now complete leapfrogging into a completely different level and making it happen? And why I'm telling you this? Today, agriculture is about 14% of the India's GDP, with more than half of the population dependent on it. The moment you bring transformation in agriculture, I just mentioned the water and its linkage, but I'm not going into other aspects because I think this program is not on agriculture. But this will have a huge positive impact on all other segments of India's economy, in services, in industry. In any case, technology application itself is a service sector activity. Whereas once you start using it and once you start getting into a different mode of agriculture, there will be more industrial applications will be needed that will have another spin-off benefit on industry itself. So this can actually transform, can increase agriculture income. The moment that happens, you will see that 14% of GDP which comes from agriculture can actually have a huge impact. The other aspect is, and that is something which probably is a need, and that's not something, I know you're not into the fundamental research, but you are actually using those technologies and applied part of it. But even then, what an important thing India is going to need, and because I think both Indra and Vijay both are from that segment, so let me mention briefly, but I wanted to say something else, but I just saw her face and just struck me. Is you mentioned about mobility. I think that's you mentioned, right? Mobility. So I think mobility is important. But what's drive the mobility? You cannot have mobility unless you use some energy. So what kind of energy you like to use for mobility? Liquid fuel, okay, that is what is today driving most of the mobility in the world. But can you think about the renewables integration into the mobility part? And that would also depend upon storage. So I think that area of energy storage is going to be extremely critical, extremely important. But I was not going to say that this is something which is well known and talked a lot about. But I am going to the other part, and that is, again, I am saying it's not fundamental research you are doing. That's the job of some of the fundamental research institutions. But still, big challenge we are going to face as a country is materials. When you don't have your own rare earth sources and you want to build tomorrow's very vibrant economy, how can you do that without having proper access to these materials that are going to be made out of this? Today, we have talked about for many years energy security is a big challenge because we import so much of oil, etc. But which I just mentioned about energy storage can actually change the dimension of the energy security aspect. We not import, we can solve it. But what about the security of society, economy, and all the activities which are dependent on some materials like rare earths which are not available? How do you manage it? How do you survive? And therefore, this is going to be another key challenge for us. As I said, I will just talk about two or three things, so I don't want to go into something else. But let me come back on track on what the issue that you are talking about. What is the back on track issue? That how do you develop India? And this is very interesting challenge we got because it is also part of a philosophy, not just India's, but more or less all the human beings in the world. They derive the knowledge from the same source. So maybe the philosopher's name differs, but the source of philosophy remains the same because philosophy finally depends on ultimate truth. And ultimate truth cannot change. So what is that ultimate truth? People all realize that if you want to do something different and you want to first find out whether the way you are going out, the way you are traveling is not right, the first thing is to do is to pause. do introspection. I think this was willy-nilly thanks to COVID-19, thanks to Corona. We got this great opportunity of forced stop and therefore the time to introspect. It's a great opportunity for us to really revisit about our own strategy. We are all the time thinking about building something by looking at others. Can we not look at our own self, find out our own strengths, and build on that for global applications? See, this is again part of our own Indian philosophy as well. So today, very interestingly, and this, I don't know whether uh, your institution seems to be very powerful, because I think to set a proper background for this program, the cabinet yesterday decided to do something interesting. That space is something which we have decided now to open up. Space is always open, but space programs were not always as open as they should have been. ISRO has done a phenomenal job. I'll tell you an interesting story. The president, the senior most advisor who sits in the Blue House of the president of South Korea, a very, very dear friend of mine, when I was just went to South Korea a few weeks ago, just before the COVID started, and we had a very interesting meeting in the Blue House of the president's house, and he was telling me, asking me a question, which we had discussed earlier, because he was also my friend for a long time, so we had discussed earlier. The issue was, how can we use India's low-cost space applications, which are very high-ended, for making into a globally accepted product? Now, this is something very interesting. When we started a space program, we had never heard of the bottom of pyramid story. That came much later. C.K. Prahlad talked about bottom of pyramid much, much later. We started this program many years ago. And why we had to work on the program and we had to modify the program? Again, because of the forced situation. If you recall, there was a time, of course now I'm not talking about space, I'm talking about something else, but there was a time when India was denied access to the supercomputer. When we discovered it, we made it on our own. Space program was in a similar trajectory, that we didn't have access to some of the high-end technology, so we had to develop it our own. Today's topic of your program, back to track, how can India grow in future? Can we therefore focus on some of such technologies, like the space technology, which we develop on our own almost? Not that everything basic we discovered. It was from somewhere, but the application part we did it ourselves. So, what Professor Dr. Bhatnagar mentioned earlier, can we become India could be the leader of some of these things. Always possible. But we should not try to think that we want to be a leader. See, that's a wrong connotation actually. Leadership should not be claimed to be ours. The world should say we are the leaders. So we should not say that I am already a leader, and when I look back, there is no one follower for me. So rather than that, let me not say whether I am a leader. Say that I want to move in this direction for a global scale operation. That's why I said India has always been integrated. Space is another good example, but can we now therefore think about more such sectors? Knowing about your institution, I'm quite excited by the fact that you have such a structure in which membership driven, but with such top class people coming in and thinking about his ideas. I remember, I know about your institution, of course, but I would therefore like to challenge you to think what could be these new frontiers, which is something which not only for our own self, but something which will have an application globally. And particularly, we always look at applications when we say H1BC visa in USA. Can we think about applications in Africa? Same number of people like India, same level of development, so they'll be happy to get it. Rather than somebody who is going to, and you go to US and say, I have a technology, they will first start from a high pedestal thinking, what are you talking about? We know better, we are the best in the world. Unlike that, when you go to our friends there, so close to us, closer to us, if not very close to us, they will be more receptive to look at these ideas. I think India future has to be technology driven, as it always has been. As I told you, the change of technology, the nature of technology has changed. The technology has always been driving it. But the kind of change that we are going to see in the next few years' time will be just phenomenal. So we should not just watch it, but we should drive it. And to drive it,
Yeah.
we need strategy. Strategy cannot be made by someone like me who doesn't know much, but by you who understand everything so well. So let me offer you my best wishes and also reinforce my commitment towards making this happen with you as friends and partners. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very, very much. It's really, I mean, all the areas that you touched about has got real deep impact for India. And as an institution, we will continue to look at your support as well as work towards these areas. Uh, thank you so much for your insight. And now we have got about 10 more minutes of your time. I'd like to open this up for any questions that people might have around what you spoke. Uh, Please keep your questions to the area that spoke about and the topic of today. You can use the question box, which is there right next to your screen, to put in the questions and we can take few of them. We have got about 10 minutes of search time. In the meanwhile, while we are getting the questions to the panel, is there something that you would like to comment or question while we are waiting for the questions to come in?
So, Shekhar, let me start. Sir, as I told you that we are working on 11 working groups. And honestly, this year we started a working group only on water. And last year we started a working group on agriculture and started working on how we can utilize technology to help our farmers in the agriculture sector. And this year, the major focus is on water and similarly on energy. So, we have been working with different teams and trying to see how can we work on these areas. But sir, I'm really very thankful to you for your guidance. Your thought on, the supercomputer was not given to us and so was the space technology. And how can we work ourselves to become, take ourselves to a higher level. I'll definitely work with our panel members and see how can we take it forward. Thank you very much, sir. Thank
Vijayji, you have a point?
Yes, sir. You have been well associated with the central government and you know the problems facing the country more than any of us here. One of the issues is that energy segment or the electricity segment is both center as well as state subjects. So is agriculture. So are a lot of subjects where there is no unified thought process, similarly specifications, etc. My suggestion to you, sir, is why don't you drive such a centralized think tank which can set specifications across the entire country where we can have uniform policy across the country because like we've got a centralized GST panel, why not have centralized think tanks? Your thoughts on this, sir?
No, actually, see, there is always a challenge between always a trade-off in life. But the advantage of centralization, there is always an advocacy for decentralization. Always. But there are trade-offs. The advantage of centralization, as you correctly mentioned, you can see something and get it through. But then the question is, where is the democracy? And now, therefore, the trade-off is how to make both things happen at the same time. Now, I tell you something, and I didn't know Dr. Bhatnagar as a Rishi is trying to work on water and agriculture, which is my interest. But I am saying why I was saying why I'm mentioning this. Today we have this challenge. So how do you push through everything, which is such a good idea, but because of various levels of government, you cannot implement it. I would say the solution lies in technology. Coming to the issue of think tank. Actually, we have a think tank. It's called a national think tank. The name of the think tank is NITI Aayog. But DTI national institute must work on these issues. But I personally feel, I mentioned it, an ecosystem that is necessary for a technology to be properly delivered. So there, I agree with some sort of think tank which can create that application part of it in terms of absorption of technology. What type of ecosystem is needed to make it happen? So that's fine. But I think it's a great opportunity for us is to use some of these critical areas where we can show some chamatkar, the miracle, in terms of producing more. Automatically, everything will fall in place, and that chamatkar can come through technology alone. There's nothing more than that.
Right. So there is one question which has come from Kunal Kathuria, who is the Senior Associate Futures First Info. He's saying, sir, you mentioned about Korea, who are one of the world leaders as far as tech is concerned. So can we learn something from them as to how they are able to retain the best talent in their country and not lose it to the Western countries?
South, actually it's again a miracle country, has produced some exceptional results in such a short period of time. And what is that miracle come from? Only two things actually speaking. Again, oversimplifying it: technology and scaling it up. They scaled up, everything can be applied to the global markets, and therefore it's actually exactly the thing that we should try to do, is use our own ideas, and not necessarily everything can be homegrown. It is not homegrown in a sense with technologies. So some technology has to come outside. Like for example, nobody can claim that India is the author of blockchain or artificial intelligence or internet of things. This is something which will come, but we can we use it together and use it for some. And for that, as my South Korean friend was asking me, there could be a partners in doing that. And therefore, we should try to believe and work on alliances, partnerships, which can actually benefit them, benefit us, benefit the rest of the world. So I think this is what we should try to do. I think India, you wanted to ask something? See, I could see your hand being raised.
Ma'am, you are mute.
Can I go ahead, Shekhar?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So I personally feel that we waste a lot of resources, be it water, be it power. And government is one of the biggest waster of resources. How can we make government accountable, and how is it that we can use technology? Rishi, I think this is an area where we can all work together to ensure that the government of India doesn't waste a lot of our resources.
I think basically, as we always believe in, that's a traditional wisdom, is that necessity is the mother of invention. So today, I think whole government machinery, whether central government, state government, local government, they all have to produce results with less resources available, because the economic activity and the tax to GDP ratio, India's tax to GDP ratio is growing. But now, if the economy is not growing to that extent, the resources of the government will be limited. So therefore, in that context, government will be looking at ideas, and therefore, I think it's the best time for industry to interface with the government and actually come out with a solution. The best solution is, as I'll again tell you, try to work in a manner that your solutions can be applied without too much of government support. Government should be a facilitator, or government should not create a problem for you, I can understand. But if you can actually work in that particular way, it will be a fantastic thing. Actually, many examples, and you are in Bangalore, our IT industry itself is a good example of that. And this could just keep growing without any problem. So I think even the other example is, because I was also responsible for it, I was chemicals and fertilizer minister, is a pharmaceutical industry. I was minister 22 years ago, where I was telling pharma industry that your products can be sold globally, and particularly in the Latin America. And everybody was laughing at me. But because I forced them, they went there, and now they are doing very good business in Latin America. Some of them have factories there. So I was actually forced them to do. So in fact, the role of the government should be like that only. Explore market for them, open opportunities for them, ensure that doors are open for them wherever they get stuck, and then you can use your own prowess of technology, managerial ability to do this. I think, and time has come for this, because as I said, government will want to have better results in shortest possible time. with least of government involvement, because that's what government's ability also will be limited. Because now, to look at it today, the entire government machinery is focused on fighting corona. The police are involved, not only in India, I'm talking about globally. In fact, all over the world, and in fact, in some country like in South Africa, the army is on the street to fight corona. So the entire government machinery, which including army, which is supposed to protect the borders from external threat, are being used to fight one thing. So in that context, what is the best way is to create another arm of the government to create such opportunities, or the government will be always be inclined to think that is the best way to do is to let industry come out with solutions and we can produce it. So it's the best time for you. I hope we all seize it together. So if you permit me, I had to go for some other program. So it was 2:45. I had to go for other program. But if you permit, otherwise there is some one or two question I can definitely answer.
So thank you so much. Thank you so much for all your insight. And we definitely, Vijayji, you want to say something? Yes, please.
Yes, sir. Sir, two suggestions. One is, I entirely agree with your optimism for India, and I also believe that if we go further properly, we can become a world superpower. But sir, two things. One is that we are seeing here that though our country is having the lowest internet costs in the world, our internet is not world class. So my two suggestions or three suggestions would be that why can we not focus on just three aspects? Number one, our internet needs to be the lowest cost and the best in the world. Number two, our electricity needs to be stable and it needs to be the cleanest electricity in the world. Number three, our engineering needs to be the best and with the latest technologies. And if government focuses on these three areas under your guidance and leadership, because you've changed the electricity scenario in the country, if we do focus on these three things, we can be a world leader in a very short time. I'm sure you will agree, sir. So what I would like from you is how we can move ahead in this.
No, in fact, I cannot agree with you more, because that starts from a basic premise. And what is that premise? Is that, as you can see, as I can see in my screen in front of me, see, each one of you have a huge capability and you can go and succeed anywhere in the world. Like Indra's son has succeeded even in Hollywood, when he's making films there, directing films there. So you can succeed anywhere in the world. Then what is that does not allow them to succeed back home as much as they can succeed elsewhere? That exactly precisely the point you're mentioning is coming from the fact that we should provide the basic structure, infrastructure. And that is what exactly you're talking about. I fully agree. And that cost of that infrastructure, and I will add one or two more points, is cost of doing business. The ability of the businessman to do something better, all of that will count a lot more. I think I agree with you. So how to do it? I think that's what Prime Minister is now, I think, is completely focused on that issue. I think we should hope that will happen sooner. But there cannot be any other alternative than this, because India doesn't lack in entrepreneurship. So only problem is that entrepreneurship should not be used to fight something which is so unnecessary, like the government system, the government procedure, the bureaucracy and others. So I think if you can avoid that, remove that roadblock, I think that's something which will really yield the kind of result that all of us are expecting. And ultimately, if you really look at it, the growth of a country can never happen without growth of society. And society can never grow if the individuals don't grow. So what you are talking about is allowing the individual's inherent ability to grow, and that is exactly is what the growth is all about. So I think I fully agree with you.
Right. Thank you so much, sir, for all the insight and this discussion, the questions which came, your answers. What it seems right now is whatever the IET is doing is absolutely aligned with the thought process that you have just given us. And we have been working in various of those areas already. So we would continue to seek your guidance and support, and we will come back to you with keep coming back to you with reports of what we have been doing and where we have been able to create impact. And hopefully that should help propel our country to a greater height.
So thank you very much. I take your leave.
Thank you so much.
But I don't leave you. So I will be with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we move to the next part of our conversation, which is a very high-powered discussion by four very high-powered individuals who are leading industry, who are industry leaders by themselves, who have been very successful in their own right, and talk to them about their thoughts about how do you get India back on track. I'd like to take this point. You've heard a number of them, but I'd like to take this time to introduce them formally to all of you. Start with Indra ma'am. Indra Menon, she is the chairman and managing director of Senapati Whiteley Group. She's born of an industrial and highly respected family with a long history in business and industrial activities for over 7 decades, and with close connections with government and community in Bangalore. She took over the mantle of presidency of the chamber during its tenure. She is the chairman and managing director, as I said, of Senapati Whiteley Group, a flagship member of the Senapati Group of companies in Bangalore. The company is a pioneer in India in the manufacturing of press boards and press papers for electrical insulation, filter paper, automotive, and industrial applications. She is also the managing director of Lakshmanan Isola Private Limited, which is engaged in the manufacture of sophisticated insulation products for generators, motor tractors, etc. She is part of our India development panel of the IET, and she supports the growth of IET in India. She's also a member of our IoT panel as well. Next, I'd like to introduce Mr. Mustafa Wajid. Mr. Mustafa Wajid is the chair of the steering committee of the IET Future of Mobility and Transport Focus. Aside from being the chair of IET's Communities Committee for South Asia, chair of the India Development Panel, that was his previous chairmanship, chair of the India Development Panel, which is the visionary body which brings together IET forward. Mrs. Menon is also a member of the India Development Panel of the IET. In his day job, Mustafa ji works as the managing director and CEO of the Meher Group. He stumbled into entrepreneurial career in 1977 at the age of 16 when he designed and manufactured his first power capacitor in Bangalore. He keeps on saying that I did a startup when it was not fashionable to do startups, and he started a company called Meher Capacitors, which has now grown into the Meher Group, which he now guides. And his thought processes about change and transformation is something that we look forward to. He supports and mentors a variety of startups and has high transformation potential. He looks at those things, and his ideas are very incisive. We would like to also introduce you to Mr. Vijay Karya, who is the chairman and managing director of Ravin Group. With experience of more than 30 years, Mr. Karya, chairman and managing director of Ravin Group, has played a key role in identifying growth opportunities for the group within India and across the globe. He believes in harnessing newer technologies to provide smart electrical solutions, and at the same time promoting clean and green energy and encouraging innovative ideas for improvement in electricity consumption. Awarded as one of Asia's most promising business leaders, recognized as the game changer of India in 2018, and top 50 entrepreneurs by the Economic Times. He's a visionary with vast knowledge and experience in the power and electricity sector. He was recently recognized as a leading industrialist at the House of Lords, UK, and was awarded as a patron of the Global Awards by Priyadarshini Academy. He's a chartered accountant by profession and member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants India. And we are very, very excited to have this high power group, a panel here, to talk about what should be the next steps for India Incorporated as we go forward. So also you have Dr. Rishi Bhatnagar in this. I've already introduced Rishi to that, so I'm not going back and introducing him again. We all know him. A lot of you already have worked with him in various capacities. So this is our panel: Mustafa sir, Indra ma'am, Vijay ji, and Rishi. I have got about 3 or 4 questions just kickstart the conversation, which we will start off with, and then we will also wait for the audience to ask a lot of questions. We have got sufficient time for the audience to ask questions. So that is what we'll do. See, in my mind, when I look at the industry and how COVID-19 has impacted the industry, I feel different industries have been impacted in a different way. For example, the IT, ITS industry just picked up their laptops and went home. and started working from home. And there was a bit of security challenges and internet challenges and stuff like that, but they were niggling challenges, not really. And most of the time, they had an uninterrupted way of going forward. Yes, they do tout this as the world's largest experiment of working from home in the IT industry, which nobody thought would be possible, but it has now become possible. But oh, out of the four of you here, three of you come from a manufacturing background. The way the manufacturing industry has been impacted by this COVID-19 is very different from the IT industry or the office-based industries. So it is important to understand for our audience as to how this whole pandemic is impacting different kind of industries in different ways, how the problems are different from each other. So my first question would be to ask you as to how do you see the difference in the impact in your industry or the industries that you see around you, and get your perspectives around that. So I'd like to start with Indraman, if I may.
Sure. Okay. Thank you all for having me here. What I would really like to say is during any crisis, COVID-19 has given us all a big jolt. And I think we need to, sometimes the jolt is good because we need to assess the situation and uh, address it very, very seriously. In our industry, I would like to say that healthcare is in all industrial hubs. Like my industry is in a rural area. I think the government and we should have taken care of. We started a hospital way back. I think 55 years ago. My father did, and we got the first Rotary hospital way back in 76 or 77. But that's not good enough. I think every industrial hub needs to have basic health care. So that's one of the most critical uh, requirements for industry in India, to make our people comfortable, to ensure that they are safe and their families are safe. Otherwise, how can you work and provide? So I think that's one critical area, taker, that we need to address. Then again, like Vijay said and Prabhuji said, we need to take care of our water resources, which is also extremely critical. We need to take care of power. I I know we're talking about future of technology, but we really need to address our basic infrastructure in India. I think that is very important, and I don't think we've addressed it enough, in my opinion.
All right. Thank you, ma'am, for that. Any additional comments from any of the other panelists on this? How you see your industry being impacted? Any or your ancillary industries? What are the challenges that you see immediately as of now?
Thank you, Shekhar. I think if I'm to be a little bit optimistic, I would say that this jolt that we got from the pandemic has actually perhaps enabled all of us to get on track, because the pandemic has created a situation which none of us had ever seen. It has destroyed a lot of things. It has destroyed plans. It has destroyed workplaces. It has destroyed economies. But most of all, I think it has destroyed notions that we had. And the destroyed notions has made us realize that we don't require large and expensive workplaces to work, and that we can do a lot of things in a more economic and commercially viable manner. And I think that's the big positive I think that this pandemic has brought about. I'm not denying the fact that it's impacted the lower segment or the lower strata of society to a very large extent. But at the same time, the positives are uh, very, uh, very much less polluted environment. Uh, the government and businesses have started working together for the first time that I can see in my life, that government and businesses are aligned. So all in all, I think as a first step, I would say that the pandemic has created huge opportunities, and I think if business people act properly, if they act in alliance with what is required of them, if they shun their competitiveness and work collaboratively, it's very, very exciting times ahead for the industry. Yes, it slowed down manufacturing to a very large extent, but that should pick up. A lot of industries will get destroyed, but I think a lot of them will get back on track very quickly.
Mustafa sir, anything to add to this from your side?
Yeah, just a moment. Yeah, thank you for those observations, Indra and Vijay. Very important to remember what you said. We are in a situation. Being an electrical engineer, I tend to use mathematics to give analogies and make decisions of my own. The current situation is like a complex differential equation whose roots are not really clear, and there are many factors here. For example, health and safety is right at the top of the agenda. Technologies that can enable contactless working or can eliminate physical interaction, etc., are suddenly becoming important. The ability of an economy to grow by being export driven has suddenly become very, very debatable, because every country and there is trying to get more protectionist. We are talking about self-reliance, so are other people. And they are also going to do a lot of things to stop importing things that they are doing today. And finally, we have there are several issues, but I'm only listing a few top ones. And the continuous rise of China, which has been something that has been happening over the last couple of years, and the belligerence that we see that is accompanying that rise. Coming back to India Inc., I would caution everybody that if you look at it from a mathematical point of view, what we have is a discontinuity now. This is not like a car which has stopped, which after some time will start and we can resume our journey. Okay, we are going to have discontinuity. And if those of us who have studied mathematics will remember that there are 4 different types of discontinuity. Some are finite, some are infinite. Okay, it depends on how we model the equation. So what is going to happen is that this is a situation which for India Inc. will create a scenario where post-COVID, whenever that happens, we will have to see a new avatar of India Inc., in which we may find a lot of new people. We may find that some of our friends and our close associates who were very big in industry or in India Inc. before the COVID are no longer present. This is going to be a very dislocating kind of thing, and that is why I call it a discontinuity. I remember during my career the economic liberalization as a turning point of India's economic growth. And I can remember several corporate companies and large business houses which were dominant before liberalization and who are nowhere on the picture today. I think the same thing is going to happen post-COVID. So what we need to remember is that this is a complicated subject. We are not going to be exporting ourselves to grow, because everybody who is an importer today has become much more careful. Okay, we are going to be having to deal with this belligerence of China problem because we have a multi-thousand-kilometer border with them. And last but not the least, the big elephant in the room will be unemployment. We can all talk about coming back on track, but we will never be able to come back on track unless we solve the unemployment problem in whatever form and manner that needs to be done. So we are facing a very grave crisis. We are facing a very grave, complex situation. That is why I likened it to a differential equation. Classically, in mathematics, when we have a very complicated differential equation, we use a very interesting mathematical tool to solve it. It's called a Laplace transform. It basically breaks up the differential equation into parts, resolves them individually, and then integrates the whole lot to come back with a solution. I think this is what is required. There are no sort of one-stop, one-push-button kind of solutions. While we go on crying about lack of infrastructure, lack of alignment between the central government and the state governments, these are points that came up. I suspect that given our democracy and the vibrant democracy that we are, these will continue. We will have to work around them rather than wait in anticipation for something to happen. So we have to solve the unemployment problem. We have to solve all these issues. Now we come to the part where what is the future tech that can be used in resolving the complex parts of this differential equation. The digital technology is definitely an area where if we get going properly, we will probably, because of our large population usage and language flexibility, we can not only solve a lot of problems in India, but we can probably reaffirm a leadership position in the global community, because nobody has the population that we have. For example, let me tell you that what I heard is that China is at the forefront of facial recognition technology. Why? Because they just photographed everybody. They're not going to worry about privacy and so on and so forth. I am not giving that as an example. I am giving it as a reference to how large population and digital technology can create new streams of competence which can put India on top. I think that's a very important issue. I think similarly, electric mobility. India is a country of two-wheelers and three-wheelers. If we can move electric mobility into this domain, coupled with electric mobility in buses and metros, the railway anyway works on electricity now, I think we will be able to show a lot of the way, like what Mr. Prabhu mentioned. For example, Africa could be a very large opportunity for electric mobility companies because they also need two-wheelers and three-wheelers. Mobility is as important a human need as now digital technology. Okay, so there are going to be different pockets of opportunities that will come up. My caution is that it is a differential equation. There is not only economic issues and technology issues, there are also geopolitical issues involved. So I think we need to discern these things and remember what happened just as a reference before and after India's economic liberalization. So I think we are heading for a new India Inc. avatar, many of which we do not know who exist today, many of which who exist today who unfortunately may not be around in the future of India Inc. So these are the realities that we will have to face, and it is up to each and every company to understand this and try and find a way around it and probably implement something. But please remember, in some ways we only can be reactive because we cannot predict the corona. We cannot predict a vaccine. So in some ways we have to be reactive, in some ways we have to be proactive. Drawing the balance between these two in a point of discontinuity is what makes a good mathematician. Applying the same thing in real life and finding that balance will make for a good business and a peace of mind. It is very important at this point of time to remember the philosophy, ancient philosophies that can stabilize our thinking, because like the Buddha has said, you can see clearly only when your mind is calm. So if India Inc. has to get back on track, the horizontal requirement across the sector of India Inc. and society is to think calmly, because only then we can see clearly. Over to you, Shekhar. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Azhar. Very, very profound. I'm sure our audience has got a new thought process around what you just said, and I'm sure we'll have a lot of questions around what you just put. I'd now like to go to Rishi to get his inputs. I had a series of 4 questions planned, but I don't think I'll have to ask any of them because we have covered most of those questions. So we'll just leave Rishi to have the last word, and then I'll open it up for questions.
Yeah.
I just want to remind everybody before you go, Rishi, that please put your questions in the question format, or you can raise your hand if you want to ask a live question directly to the panel.
So Shekhar, I'd like to make 2 points. First, being from the IT industry, from the very first day of when we started, we are into the future technologies and that are implemented. We all work on laptop. Our infrastructure is on cloud, so we can work from anywhere. So the kind of disruption that the other industries faced because of COVID-19, our industry was very well covered, and we did not face that level of problem, except for some ensuring that data privacy, data protection, and all those kind of things. We were able to work from home. The remote locations, the access to those collaboration tools, the kind of communication required, the contactless. We are all doing it from our own offices in Chicago, San Jose, London, Japan, India, and multiple locations in India. So we were used to it. But the question now is, when we came in 2016 and we were going to each and every large manufacturing plants and trying to tell them that you can remotely manage your machine, You can switch on, switch off, remotely monitor, remotely, and you make it a digital factory. You will be able to control your complete factory from your mobile or from your laptop. Nobody was interested in hearing us. Few of them said, okay, let's do a pilot. Many, and these are the decisions which used to be taken at the board level. I have given presentation to many boards. Okay. And every board chairman used to say, okay, let's work on a return on investment. What is the ROI? By when will we able to do it? Shekhar, we did about 100 pilots with the manufacturing companies. I am really sorry to tell that only one pilot got implemented across factories, and many of them continued as a pilot and nothing happened. But in the last 3 months, the number of calls I got to move those pilots from those to implementation are many. So, as Mustafa sir said and Vijay sir also mentioned, the technology needs to get implemented, and if one of the factory could have been managed through remote locations and your mobile could have told you how much the production, how much the raw material, how much things can happen. So many of those industry 4.0 kind of things that were there could have been implemented are now getting a lot of requirements and people are asking for them to be implemented. Last word before I give it back to you. There are a lot of thoughts that the old legacy machines, there will be huge requirement to replace them to get them digitalized. Okay. Technology has been able to enable to create a platform by which I have a small hardware by which I can get some data from old 70-year-old machine. Okay. So that paper industry, the cement industry, which are there from hundreds of years, and the people say, I already have a factory, why will I implement in a new machine? You will not require to implement and buy a new machine. I can use your existing infrastructure and make it to an extent. Don't expect everything can be done, but to some extent I can get some data out of it and start controlling it and provide you remote access to your infrastructure which is already existing and running. Thanks, Shekhar. Back to you.
Thank you, Rishi. It is a new world, isn't it? From all areas, and the people, as Mustafa said, as people get people who adapt to the new world faster will be the people who will continue to grow and prosper in this new world. Now, I have got a question directly for Mustafa sir. Says Avi Sabawala, consultant BCCI, has posted. He's asked Mr. Wajid, what solutions do you suggest for reducing unemployment while embracing technology?
I think if we are looking at India Inc., we include agriculture into India Inc. now that the government has passed an ordinance that the produce can be anywhere else. I think that we must solve the unemployment problem with a greater sense of vigor and enthusiasm in the rural part of our country, which is where the majority of our population lives. And that has further increased now because a lot of people have gone back from the cities. So it is up to the agricultural sector and companies that play in the agricultural sector to see how they can contribute towards improving prospects and increasing the money in the hands of the farmer, which will help the consumption economy. Let's remember, India is heading towards being a consumption economy. We cannot export ourselves to prosperity like China did in a post-COVID scenario. So we will have to concentrate on improving consumption, and that starts with the agricultural sector. It needs to be adequately balanced and supported by the traditional version of India Inc., which meant industry, and that will have to happen using a combination of technologies, some of which Rishi has described very clearly, because I think contactless, virtual, and also the ability to stay safe and healthy will determine how well the manufacturing sector operates. One small incident can lead to a shutdown of a complete factory. So we will have to go more and more contactless. So the grim reality is that most of the manufacturing industry is probably now trying to see how to optimize employment or to reduce it, to use a harsh word. This is the reality of the situation. So we will have to balance off this with the corona reality as it unfolds. Of course, this is a dynamic variable. Nobody can make predictions. So I would caution that, put a caveat that if a vaccine comes tomorrow morning, things can be very different. That's the dynamism of the whole thing. The other thing in the digital side, work from home, I think, is going to become a very important part of everybody's lives, in everybody's house. This is a problem that is going to be addressed, has to be addressed very differently, because typically in Indian households we have at least two or sometimes three generations of people living, grandparents, parents and children. So if we are going to have more and more of this work from home, we need some new paradigms of standard operating procedures and so on and so forth. The great advantage about work from home is that it actually opens up the possibility of increasing employment for delivering services on a global basis. This is a very, very important part. New thoughts are to be put into this, because the reality is that the rest of the world does not have as many qualified engineers and technical people with skills that we have in sheer number. Now, how do we ensure that these skills and competencies can be useful to people in other societies? That is something that we should be looking at, and probably that is the way to export ourselves into a little more prosperous situation as a country in the future. So these are some of the ideas that are floating around. As I said, please remember the principles of discontinuity. I would strongly recommend to those of us who are engineers and to go back to the discontinuity chapter in advanced mathematics and reread it, because there is a lot of relearning that can happen from that. That's a rather long answer to a short question. I hope it answered some of them at least. Thank you.
I'm sure it did. I'm sure it did. Any of you would like to add on to what Mustafa sir said, especially around unemployability, and how do you see that being tackled in the future?
So, Shekhar, while I agree entirely with Mustafa, I think you have to understand that two, three things are happening simultaneously. The focus is now coming onto the MSMEs. And just yesterday we had a very long webinar with Sanjeev Sanyal, the Principal Economic Advisor to the Finance Ministry, and he also said that the government is focusing on MSMEs. So the concern is moving towards smaller businesses. That's one part. So, the employment generation in the MSME segment is much, much more. And people are becoming more entrepreneurial. In this time of lockdown, people have also started introspecting as to how we can do. I'll give a very small example of near my house. Suddenly, at one place, a huge on the roadside, a huge vegetable shop opened up, and it's about 10 minutes walk from my house. So we generally go for a walk up that slope, and when I question, because they seem to be set of young boys, they were actually boys who were engineers and who were financial experts, and they decided to open up this vegetable shop, and they were going and getting these vegetables, and they said that what to sit at home and do. So we came and we said, let's do this as a matter of social service. They started with social service. It got down to business for them. Now, though most of them have gone back to work in a limited situation, they are continuing with that shop because they find that it's become an additional source of income for them. And what they've done is they've got in other people, so they financed a set of people. Suddenly, we people who are always going and buying from malls are now shunned malls because we don't want to go there. And suddenly, our small kirana shops and our vegetable vendors who were with us for years suddenly have turned back into focus. So, similarly, I think even in case of industry, we are seeing that a lot of workers have run away, but we are yet slowly ramping up with lower manpower also to virtually the same levels as earlier, if not fully, at least we are 70%, 80% there. So it's about more from less. And I think this is going to create a lot of opportunities. Whilst I don't deny that it's a very uncertain situation and we don't know what will happen, but I think of the lot across the entire world, India, because of its adaptability and its jugaad and its technology and ability to work with the barest of bare resources, is going to land up at the top of the heap.
Great, lovely. What I get out of this conversation before I move on to Indra ma'am and Rishi is that we have to start thinking differently. The structures that we were used to before, especially around employability, are changing. So it is not necessarily the way you were employed before and the way your thought of employability was in the pre-COVID world will remain the same. So your whole paradigm has to change, and then opportunities are always there. So moving on to Indra ma'am and then to Rishi.
Yeah, I feel, we need to change. I think large-heartedness is a prerequisite for any smooth implementation. So I think, like everybody said, we have to take care of the community around us immediately. Uh, it's totally informed knowledge which are the industries that used the large number of migrant people. I wish they and the particular industries and the government had worked together to provide housing for these people, which they've all used from all different parts of the country. So we should have ensured that they were well taken care of. So there was no this large exodus. So people also have to start thinking differently about the people they employ and their responsibility toward them and their well-being and for them and their families. I think that's a very important
Yeah,
way of
I
looking at things.
completely agree with you, ma'am. Moving on to Rishi, your thoughts around what the situation is unfolding on.
So, Shekhar, the question was more on the skill side. So, I just want to answer first on that. Okay. You know, whenever anything new, any disruption or transformation happens, things will change. So, when the factories come in UK and people were still running the charkha, there is a job loss. Okay. And similar was the case when the computerization was starting in India, and people said if the railways will get computerized, there will be huge amount of job loss, and there were street strikes, and people were on the street not to allow computerization in railways. Okay, but IT industry flourished. India became a IT hub, and today we have a 260 billion US dollar worth of revenue or industry that came out of that transformation. The idea which I want to tell you, every disruption or transformation, whatever I call it, will result in some level of change. We need to see how will we unskill ourselves and reskill ourselves to adapt to that change. So there will be some level of disruption, but there will be a huge amount of new kind of jobs that will emerge, is what my belief is. And if you give me one more minute, I can give you an example where the electric rickshaw that moves from Meerut to the 25-kilometer villages and carry vegetables from villages back to Meerut, sell those vegetables in the evening and carry stuff for the villagers which they have asked in the morning, and become an Amazon for the rural area. So this was the serving the unserved, becoming a new kind of the electric rickshaw, and we were able to put some technology on top of it, and we are doing a lot of things other than just carrying vegetables and some urea and some fertilizers, so that it is become a new kind of job. A new guy getting an e-rickshaw, a guy getting more revenue because of transferring the fresh products from the villages to the city and carrying the stuff which the villager has asked from city back to the village. It is a new job that got created. Okay, who had thought of the electric rickshaw which can travel only 100 kilometers can provide a new kind of job for that person who can earn by providing this. And we are adding lots and lots other services on top of that e-rickshaw and seeing how can we provide service the unserved in villages and provide new kind of skills and new kind of jobs. So I am very optimistic for the future. There can be a bit of challenges, but we'll overcome. Yes, sir.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just request everyone to remember that if you look at societies and GDP within societies, the largest contributor to GDP within any society is anything and everything to do with mobility. This is true whether it is a Western country like America or India or China or even I would say a sub-Saharan African country. The need for people to move is something that drives economic activity and actually can push economies into a high growth zone. So I think that mobility solutions in India will particularly play an important role in getting the thing. Currently today as we speak, mobility accounts for close to 14-15% of India's GDP. It's almost the same In fact, among the economic sectors, it is the largest. IT is big, but it is still smaller than the mobility. And the electrical industry, for example, is big but smaller than automobile, and so on and so forth. So I think that a lot of new jobs can get created around the mobility space if we combine the agri-tech, agro, rural, urban scenario. I see a whole lot of potential there. A good example was given by Rishi. So, and we have a very big advantage in India. We can actually emerge as the leader for light electric mobility in the world. A very large percentage of global population would actually be well served by that. I think that those are areas that the Indian industry can work on and grow very fast and very rapidly, even in a corona afflicted situation, which is causing a greater need for those kind of services to come up. Thanks, Peter.
Thank you, sir. We are actually overrunning on time, but I cannot let go without asking each one of you one question, which I'm sure everybody would be interested in, is how are you tackling this challenge in your own industry or your company? And what steps are you taking to manage it as we go on? I'm sure a lot of people would like to understand and learn from it. So I'll start with Indra ma'am once again. What are the things that you are doing in your organization to take care of this challenge that has come along?
Okay. Shekhar, I just want to say that our group of industries is set up in a rural setting. We come under essential, so we were asked to open our company on the 6th of April. But the panchayat came to me, some panchayat members came to me and said, ma'am, if you open up, we'll have people moving in from the city and that will kind of hurt us. So I immediately said, look, I don't want the company to run if you guys are not comfortable. So I shut down the operations and started it 1 month later. But I started thinking like my dad, that I'm just taking care of my people and going one step at a time instead of just wanting to increase production manifold. I just started working with my people and totally did not cut, haven't had the operations, I'm sorry, didn't get the order position ready, but totally provided salaries for everyone and all concerned, and did not reduce any salaries, but at the same time working with a human interface with them, taking care of all their problems. That's what I started. As a matter of fact, I just wanted to tell you, it was a pity. I had the government had approached me, and I had 300 people ready and waiting to pack food for more than 2 weeks, cleared up my canteen and my shop floor. But unfortunately, due to logistical constraints, the government couldn't provide me the 10,000 tons they wanted me to pack. So I'm just taking one day at a time and working with our team.
No, thank you, ma'am. And the focus on humans and humanity is more important than ever at this point of time. And that's a lesson for everybody who is listening, that whatever you do while you're working on business, the fact is that the focus on humans and humanity and our fellow human beings has to be there at all points of time. So as a lot of people say, the true mettle of a leadership comes when how you perform in a crisis. And we can see between the two of you that you are truly stepping up. I will move on to Mustafa sir now and understand from him what he has been doing, how he's been handling his business, and what else he's been doing in this time of crisis.
Yeah, at one level, taking care of all the stakeholders, and when I say stakeholders, it means not only our immediate employees but also people who supply us. There are many small companies who are our suppliers, and so on and so forth. So, taking care of stakeholders was our first primary focus. And there we had to go one level deeper. It was not only about the people, but also keeping in mind our Indian living conditions. People have parents who are not well. There was a peculiar situation where in the lockdown it was even difficult to get medication and so on and so forth. So a lot of activities had to be done around that kind of a thing. So over a period of the thing was to first focus on all the stakeholders. This is apart from the CSR type of activity that we are involved in, whether it is distribution of rations and so on and so forth. So that was one thing. The other thing was getting people back to sort of a working situation while doing that. And I'm happy to say that by God's grace, we had the strength to be able to pay the salaries of our people, and including payments to a lot of our suppliers who are small service providers, etc., etc. Right? I mean, right down to the guy who's supplying you things, even for like drinking water and so on and so forth, basic things. So we were able to do that. However, in the month of May, the situation did become a little tense because the lockdown clarity was not very high at Bangalore, and we had another added problem because one of our campuses is located on Hosur Road, which is in Karnataka, but hardly about a few kilometers from the Hosur Tamil Nadu border. So we had a lot of people who live in Hosur and who work as the part of the Meher team, and at various levels, including at vice president level and also at plant operator, machine operator level and so on. So we had a serious problem because Tamil Nadu implemented a very harsh kind of lockdown, very strict kind of lockdown, and many of those people were not able to travel from Tamil Nadu to Karnataka because it's actually a distance of 14-15 kilometers from their house to the plant, but they were not able to do it. So these were some of the unusual challenges that we had to deal with because of the interstate movement that we ended up facing. However, I am glad to report that activities are now slowly picking up, and in June we believe that we have reasonably comfortably looking at achieving at least about 40 to 50% of our pre-COVID performance level. So this is at an operational level. At a macro level, what we decided to do was switch our senior management team, actually change the structure of the management team a little bit. We formed two groups. One is called as Survive, which will focus on ensuring the survival and well-being of the existing businesses. And there is another group which we created called Thrive, which will focus on the new opportunities that are going to be created post or during this COVID scenario and post-COVID scenario as a result of many things changing, social behavior changing, discontinuities happening and so on. Now the Thrive team therefore has been disengaged from the Survive team, and these guys are looking only at creating revenues from new opportunities with new technologies, and we are looking at primarily two areas there. One is clean mobility and the other is visualization in the digital space. So that's the Thrive part of it and that's the Survive part of it. I would strongly advise those of us who in industry or in any business who are doing it, try to split these two teams, because the team that needs to look at Survive issues is dealing with some very, very unusual challenges. Sometimes they can also go into a little bit of negativity because it's so unpredictable and people have a breaking point. Sometimes they can get into a depression. Sometimes they can get little, despondent. So I think that the job of senior management now is to keep the spirits up while ensuring the compassion part that Indra and Vijay have highlighted. If you are a CEO or CXO level company guy, today your primary job is to look after, to show that compassion and to keep the spirits up, apart from guiding people down these tracks and ensuring that at least in the next 6 months, all of us come back to at least 70, 80, maybe even higher, maybe 90% of the pre-COVID situation. Thank you, Shekhar.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you very much. And in the interest of time, I will not react to that because there is a lot of reaction, very positive reaction, which I'd like to give to your comment, just like the others. But we move to Rishi to understand from him how he
Yeah, Shekhar, the time is very less, so I'll be very fast. So we completely divide. We are a technology company. We develop products. Okay. So there are three ways in which I divided the whole organization. One, which is focusing on the customers who are already using our product, so that we ensure that the quality of service doesn't go down. So team was working for remote location. All the plans which we had made for BCP and DR were on the live mode. So the plans are are getting executed. So I'm happy to inform that none of our customer got any kind of issue which we could not resolve, and everything was as per the SLAs we had committed. The second team was working on the product roadmap and getting into different product releases. That team, there was no operational issue. Everybody was productive, and we kept on releasing our product release cycles as per the plan we had. The third one was the customer acquisition team. Okay, initial 2 weeks, everybody was thinking what to do, including my maybe the probable customers. But I'm happy to tell you we have been able to sign 4 large deals. We have been able to start 10 new pilots during this time. We had to work and think differently. We had to install a device in a machine. Okay. So we had to create a video and a checklist to tell my customer how they can do it themselves. Okay. And so we have been able to become more cost efficient. And I am currently working with my team and leadership team to work on the roadmap for how we'll work on in future to improve our margins, to improve our top line and grow and scale. Okay. So as per work is concerned, we uh, uh, we are thankful to our the parent company. There was no need for us to let anybody go or any reduction in salary. We continued paying our vendors on time, and we continued paying to all those associated people who work for us on time and whatever they were supposed to get paid. Thank you, Shekhar.
Thank you so much, Rishi. And so I'd like to close this by saying only this. What I got out of yes, Mustafa.
Just
Yes,
a
sir.
piece of parting advice to everybody from a traditional Kannadiga guy that is like myself. Please drink more rasam. Please have more rasam and rice. You'll be safer from the corona.
But thank you for that advice, Mustafa sir. So finally, what I got out of this, and I'm sure each one of you have got it differently, but what I got is pause, stop, reflect, clear your mind, look at what are the possible opportunities which are there. There are multiple opportunities, as we have heard. There are challenges, of course, but those challenges can be managed. Look at what, change your mindset. Start thinking differently because the paradigm has changed. And therefore, there is no way that you cannot get back on track. It might take a little time. It might have, the going might be rough, but this is probably a point of time where there are multiple new opportunities which are opening up. And the mindset of the government, the mindset of the ecosystem is all about taking these opportunities and running and making it work. So don't get despondent. This is the time to actually make things work. So with on that note, I'd like to leave all of you. Thank you, everybody. Vijay sir, you want to say something? Last word?
Yeah, last word, Shekhar. Yesterday when we were on the call, we received a very open invitation from the government that if anybody has got any big ideas and they want it implemented, then please get it to us. So I would suggest that IET can act as a curator, and if anybody has got any ideas uh, for implementation, we could, help take this across to the government, because this is the time the government is willing to listen, the government is willing to act, and this could be a great opportunity for IET also to take this and actually help the people who are the smaller business people, the one with great ideas, the startups. And I can lend even my own support in taking this to the government, as well as I think we can create a not just a think tank, but even a kind of VC fund to uh, help these ideas. I'm sure my other friends would be more than willing to support it.
Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. So that's something that we'll take on. So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for your time. It has been a wonderful discussion. It's been very insightful. I'm sure we're leaving everybody who's listening to this with a lot of positivity, a lot of peace on mind, things are possible. Let's move forward on this. And thank you very much for your time. It has been wonderful speaking to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.